This is Sawabona Radio. Welcome to I See Color with Kyle Moncure.
I love her style simply because I'm in love with her. She's beautiful.
This is the show where we get real about race, culture, and the beauty of diversity.
What's wrong with the world, mama? People living like they ain't got no mama.
The show where today, your story is the only one that matters. The show where we celebrate you in all your true color.
But I see your true colors shining through.
Diversity, history, culture, authenticity. You paint the picture, we hold the brush. We're about to entertain, educate, engage, and elevate. Now take off that mask, remove your shades, open wide, and get ready to taste the rainbow. It's magically delicious.
Hey, good morning. This is Kyle Moncure, and you are listening to the sound of I See Color. And this is Friday, April 12th, 2019. Thank you so much for listening, for tuning in. As you know, this is a new show, and this is our very first show where we actually have a featured guest. Today, our guest will be Lee Mun Wah. And if you want to know about Lee Mun Wah, you can go out to our website at iccolorradio.com, or even check us out on Facebook or Instagram. Both are I See Color Radio. Make sure and follow us, like us, friend us, love us, all that good stuff. So again, today we are going to be talking a little bit about the secret to changing the world. And Lee Mun Wah is someone that I had the honor of connecting with through social media. It is actually good for some things, you guys. So through social media, business social media, LinkedIn, we connected. He reached out and we had some really great conversations. And as a result of that, I have a new friend and mentor, and I will actually be attending his workshops later this summer in California. But Lee Mun Wah is adding a whole nother layer and a whole nother level to what I do in this field of diversity. So I'm really, really excited about having him on the show today. And I'm excited about taking what I do to the next level. He's going to teach me some things with conflict that I really am not really well versed in yet, but I'm going to get there and we're going to do this together. So again, I want you, if you're listening, make sure and subscribe to us. Don't just listen, subscribe, write a review. You can follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on Facebook. And you can tune in to Apple iTunes, Google, Spotify, Himalaya. And of course, you can listen to the show on our website, iccolor.com, iccolorradio.com. Sorry. So last week was our pilot show, and you all had an opportunity to hear from me, yours truly, Kyle Moncure. The title of that show was Kyle Moncure, Who the Heck Do You Think You Are? And my interview was done by my wonderful husband, who is not in studio today, but he will be joining us at a future date. And some of the things, some of the highlights from that show, for me, even listening back to the show, were really profound. I learned a little bit more about myself and how I felt growing up. And it really kind of led me in full circle back around to what I See Color is all about, which is diversity, history, culture, authenticity. And our tagline is, you paint the picture, we hold the brush. And what that means to me is, growing up as a young person, never feeling 100% comfortable in my own skin, kind of put me on this path of diversity and inclusion and made me know that there needs to be something created that may not exactly exist right now, which is a voice where people are celebrated, a platform where people are celebrated and embraced and affirmed for who they are, a place where people can tell their own diversity story and feel comfortable and feel like they're someplace where others actually want them to be. I use this meme all the time that says, go where you're celebrated, not just where you're tolerated. And that is what this is all about. And many times, not just in this country, sometimes even in our own homes, we don't necessarily feel like we are welcome. We're kind of just there. Well, we want to change some of that. And one of the first things we can do is start feeling great about ourselves. So if there's no place else you can go where you and all of your weirdness, your quirks and your style and your accent, whatever it is about you that makes you you, we're celebrating that all day, every day, iccolor.com. So again, last week's show was really cool. One of the questions that was asked of me was to describe my culture, define it by a meal, like what goes into that meal. And I don't think I knew until then how much I sometimes miss my hometown, Kansas City, Missouri. So I'm shouting out again to all of the barbecue, the great barbecue places in Kansas City. I miss you guys. I'm in Texas. I've been here for like 20 years. And I know this is going to make some people mad, and I'm sorry, but I've been here for almost 20 years and I still can't find the kind of barbecue that I get back home. So if you are a barbecue place and you want to show me something different, I'd be glad to talk about it on air. If you got anything similar or even better than what I can get in Kansas City, Missouri, I'm not going to call out names of restaurants, but bring it, okay? Because I will taste it and I will sing your praises, and then I'll just shut up about Kansas City having the best barbecue in the universe. But I don't think it's going to happen. But I'm open. I'm open for the challenge. All right. So I talked a little bit about me. And one of the things that's come up for me as a result of that show was asking, who the heck do I think I am? And when it comes to ethnicity and race, you know, I identify as a Black woman, and that's fine. But that does not exactly embrace or describe all of what makes me me. And so I've been really intrigued for years about my own ethnicity because I know a lot more about me. And yes, I'm Black, but I can definitely trace back to some of my white relatives and ancestors. I can absolutely trace back to some of my Native American ancestors. And I believe on my father's side, there may be even more going on than that. But I don't have a box for that. And that's one of my peeves, I guess you could call it, in this country, that who we are is chosen for us. And if you are melanated like myself, you just get blacked out. And I am Black and I'm proud of it. But I'm much more in terms of ethnicity than just African, even though I'm all about that, my African roots. But I am much more than that. And I would love to be able to and make a space for you to embrace all that you are and all its glory and all its beauty. And so, but in all honesty, I'm not yet sure how to describe and determine exactly what I am when it comes to ethnicity. There's a lot that I just don't know about myself and my ancestors, and having ancestors that will probably experience slavery, which I'm sure that they did. There's a lot of information that we just don't get, we don't have access to, that we've missed. And so that's always made me really curious about genealogy and DNA and some of those things. So I'm completely obsessed with this show, and you probably know about the show, but it's been going on for a few seasons now, and it's Finding Our Roots with Henry Louis Gates, and it comes on PBS. And I think they're in the 3rd season right now, maybe the 4th. But either way it goes, there was an episode, the very last episode that aired, that I thought was so cool. And I would really encourage you all to go back and look at the episode 10. And the title of that episode was All in the Family. And in that episode, there was, I don't even want to give it all away, but you must go see it. But what it goes into and why Icy Color is about diversity and history. We haven't dug into the history part yet, but it would be impossible to embrace and celebrate who I am without understanding what got me or got us to where we are. And so the truth about our history in this country has to come out. And it doesn't have to come out with anger and vitriol, because what's done is done. And, choosing to be angry every day about it will only get in my own way. But I have to be honest about it, because the reason that I'm here with my gold undertones is because of the mixing of my great-great-grandmother with someone else's great-great-great-grandfather of another race. In other words, a white man purchased and owned my relatives, and as a result, I'm here in all my beauty and all my power and all of that, but I am of mixed race. However, I am defined as Black. And to help me and others further understand how complex that is in this country, how complex the definition of race is in this country, I would encourage you to, watch something digestible. Check out the last episode of Finding Our Roots. That episode is called All in the Family. And you will see there's a guy there that I'm not going to tell you their names. I'm not going to say any details because I really want you to see it. And then we can talk about it inside our Facebook group. But he finds out that even though he is defined as a white man, his great-great-grandmother was Black. And this is not an old story. This is something that just recently happened. This episode just came on less than a week ago. And in addition to that, there is a Black man that finds out that he has Caucasian in his family, much closer than he even realized. And so it just leaves us feeling we actually understand ourselves a little bit more, but there's probably a little bit of confusion that comes along with finding out that you are of a race of people that you didn't realize. And so I would like to ask my listeners to go back and check that episode out because I thought it was powerful. And at the end of the episode, they did something different. I've never seen this before. Henry Louis Gates goes and visits Penn State University where they're doing a genetics and genealogy kind of a summer course, it looked like, for kids. And they were doing this so that the kids would understand their history and their own place in it. And it was so cool. I mean, it was watching those kids find out more about not just their DNA, but their relatives and looking up, the history of them. It was really cool. There was a sense of discovery. And that's what I would love to be able to have and promote, because it's important to question who we are, even when we think we already know the answer. And so actually beginning to unravel our past can help bring us all a little bit closer together. I really think that we are far more connected than we are apart. And I think finding that out might just help us a little bit in some of the conversations and the connections and the progress that we make when it comes to race and diversity and inclusion and all that good stuff. All right. So beyond that, I also want to give a really huge shout out to the National Diversity Conference. Is wrapping up today in Dallas, Texas. The keynote speaker last night, by the way, I was honored to moderate a session leading with emotional intelligence, and it was really, really cool. I had a super great panel, and I truly enjoyed it. But the big deal was our keynote speaker last night was President Barack Obama, and it was epic. You cannot imagine how many people were there. It was like a football game, but it just goes to show for me that this president, Barack Obama, is still so loved and appreciated for the work that he did and the progress that he made in bringing people together. For me, that's what it's all about. So big shout out to Dennis Kennedy. He is the founder of the National Diversity Council, and big shout out to everyone that participated and attended the National Diversity Conference in Dallas, Texas this past week. So that leads me to my Salbona song of the day. You guys, I got to tell you this quick story about this song. I try to have one song in every show, if not more, but right now it's just one song in every show. And this song came from a soundtrack of a movie that I really, really wanted to see, and I didn't see it until it went to on demand. My husband and my son weren't that thrilled about it. I love musicals, absolutely love musicals. It's hard for me to see a musical that I don't love and like, but this particular one stands out, and it was called The Greatest Show on Earth. I believe that's the name of it. Yeah, the Greatest Show, and it stars Hugh Jackman, which I have been technically in another life married to for about 15 years. I'm kidding. Don't tell my husband. But anyway, I love Hugh Jackman. I love him as Wolverine, but it was awesome to watch him play this role as P.T. Barnum. But the song that sticks with me is like, you all ever have that song that like you hear it and it just like makes you want to get up and start turning cartwheels? Like, this song is so cool. The song is called This Is Me. And I'm going to play it for you now. And then I'll be right back because we have an amazing interview with Lee Mun Wah. And we got a little more talking to do before it's all over. So you're listening to the sound of I See Color with Kyle Moncure. This is me.
I am not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, I'm gonna send the blood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apologies. This is me.
And thank you so much. We are back, and you're listening to the sound of I See Color Radio with Kyle Moncure. And now, without further ado, I am going to introduce our guest for today. I am really excited about this. It's been a long time coming since we originally spoke. But right now, if you can believe it, on the line, I have Lee Mun Wah.
I want us to get that that racism is still going on today, that we've got to stop to hear the anguish and the pain that goes with that. But what we need to do is to acknowledge something has happened and that each of us individually has to do something about it with someone next to us, in our neighborhoods, in our schools, and in our institutions.
Lee Mun Wah is an internationally renowned Chinese-American documentary filmmaker, author, poet, Asian folkteller, educator, community therapist, and a master diversity trainer. He's got more than 25 years experience, and I would like to consider him my new mentor. Lee Mun Wah, thank you so much.
Oh, that's
thank
very
you so
sweet.
much for coming on our show. I am absolutely honored to have you. And so
thank you.
I want to start with just a little bit about you. I guess my first question for you is, who is Lee Mun Wah?
Oh, well, it's very interesting. I just finished a retreat, a nonviolence Gandhian principles.
Oh.
And he was once asked that very same question, who is Gandhi?
Oh, wow.
And I think he said, how I eat, how I sleep, how I talk to my friends, how I cry, how I hold my wife, how I talk to others. He said all of these and many, many more things are the sum of who I am. And I think that's really true. I think that there's no one word that would ever summarize who I am. I think even as you were introducing me, those are just certain cornerstones that people pay attention to. But like most people, I'm probably so much more and maybe so much less.
I see. I understand. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, again, I thank you so much. If it's okay with you, I want to tell our listeners just a little bit about how we connected.
Okay, great.
All right. So I think it's been about 6 or 8 weeks ago when you reached out to me through LinkedIn, which I was so honored. And somehow I can't remember all the dialogue, but we agreed to have a conversation. And I'll be absolutely honest. So I've been doing diversity work for about 5 years now. And my husband, a little bit longer, more like 9 or 10 years. But when I told him that I was going to have a conversation with you, he got really excited. And I was not as familiar with you and your work as he was. And the first thing he brought up was a film that he watched many years ago that he told me a lot of diversity training is based around some of the work that you did way back. And the name of that film was The Color of Fear. And so he's like, you never saw it? And I said, no. He said, do you know about Lee Mun Wah's work? He's like a pioneer. He's the greatest. And I'm like, no. But I quickly caught up and found out you are amazing, amazing. And just because my interest and my passion and what I think is my calling is surrounded by this whole diversity and inclusion and of course, the dialogue that goes along with it, I thought, what better way to kick off the show with the very first featured guest to be you. And again, I know you've got a million things going on, but I am honored and I really appreciate you taking this time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So
I think, as you were talking about that doing diversity work, and I think sometimes for people of color, it's not a choice. And I think it's also something I remember as I closed my film, and if these halls could talk about college students facing diversity issues, is that that all of this was placed on us long before we were born. And it wasn't a choice. And it was something that we had to either survive or be destroyed or diminished. And so I think it's something that we're always constantly struggling with and trying to adapt and to live. And I was thinking, remember one white student said to the black student, well, what do you need from me? And he said, and the black student says, well, I would just love to have a break one day in my life.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, how profound. And that's exactly what I feel sometimes.
As simple as that answer is, it's really deep. That would be awesome, is to have a break sometime. Well, I've got some questions for you.
Okay.
Our listeners are dying to learn more about you. I've had many people reach out to me even since I posted that I was going to be interviewing you, and they were very familiar with you in many ways. I don't want to make any assumptions about what I think I know. And so I'm going to start kind of from scratch, and I want to ask you a few things and be as candid. This is fun and laid back. And even though I know that we have a strong company and corporate audience, this is a whole lot about community. And we really want to, the theme of our show is diversity, history, culture, authenticity. You paint the picture, we hold the brush. So I want to paint the picture and just dig in and learn a little bit about you. And hopefully our listeners will come away as impressed with you as I am. So I've already asked a little bit about who is Lee Mun Wah. And my next question for you is, and I think this is important, I started asking people this about 3 years ago, because in this country, oftentimes we don't get to self-identify. Our ethnicity and our race and a lot of other things seem to be kind of predetermined for us. And so my question for you, my next question is, how do you self-identify?
Well, even in The Color of Fear, I identified as a Chinese American. Mm-hmm. And as we were discovering, even with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, what it feels like to be identified or stereotyped. And I was just listening to I remember as a child growing up and thinking that I was the same as everyone, and everyone ate the same foods I did and things like this, and that my accent was valued, that it was considered beautiful. And as I discovered how people made fun of people with Chinese accents, with Mexican accents, with black accents, and I started to really realize is that we revered people who had Australian, English, and American accents.
Yes.
And just at that very beginning, what that does to you, and also as I traveled all these 33 years doing this work, is that I started to really realize how people look at you. And I was telling folks, I said, I gave that look, I said, anybody know what that look is? And all the people of color stand up and raise their hands, and it's that look of disdain, but it's also that look of, what are you doing in our town?
Right.
And I was thinking of something that James Baldwin said, is that America is one tough town. And it's very funny how you asked me this question as I identify, is because I strongly believe that my Chinese part, which is my parents were born in China, and I was talking about how in all my years I've never had anybody ask me what's it like to be a Chinese American man in this country, let alone what's it like to be Chinese. And I think that's a very interesting question, because and also there's two parts to it. One is I'd love to share it, but also I'd love someone to ask me, why is that important to me? And I think that's really the root of what you're talking about, because I've never sensed that it was important, but yet it is extremely important to me. I was voted at my state college when I was graduated in counseling, that I was voted the most outstanding graduate. When I was in teaching, I taught for 25 years, I was voted the most outstanding student teacher. And even though it was a very incredible honor, but one of the things I said at the graduation, when I was doing the keynote, what I said is, in all the years that I worked as a teacher and as a student teacher, and all the times I was working as an intern, I said, not once was I asked by my professors, as a Chinese American man, born in the flatlands of Oakland and born poor, how would you work with this student? Or as a therapist, how would I work with a client from a Chinese American perspective, born in the flatlands of Oakland and born poor? And I think that became just a tip of the iceberg of what I was never asked or never felt, that any part of my culture was useful except on Chinese New Year, and then that was it.
Yeah.
That nowhere in business, nowhere in education or in therapy or in government or in any kind of social service agency have I ever felt that my perspectives, my way of doing things, was perceived as professional, that could be changing the profession that I was in. I don't believe that our country is multicultural. I think that, in fact, it probably is monocultural. Or maybe more specifically is that we're multi-holiday. We know more about the holidays than we do about the actual people who live here.
Wow. Hold on, let me pause on that. That's major. That's major. And it's so true. Yeah, multi-holiday. I don't want to go down my road, but of some of the things that I talk about, but the Black History Month, the Cinco de Mayo, there's so many things that we celebrate, and but at the end of the day, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of appreciation for me.
Exactly. I was just thinking just now, because it's been an experience I've had with white folks, and it's something I really want your listeners to really hear, and that is, I want you to notice how much you responded to what I just said. And I think that one of the things that I've experienced as a Chinese American man and as a minority, and I think almost every minority experiences, is that you asked me a question, I actually shared with you very heartfeltly about how my experiences, and then you responded to it. I don't know how many times I have shared stories, or I had people in my audiences share similar stories, and then the person who is white simply does this. They start talking about something else. And then more recently, I asked this person, and I shared with them, don't you want to tell me how you felt about what I said? And then he was just dead quiet. And then within seconds, he started to tell his story again.
Wow.
And I remembered thinking, doesn't he realize that I'm feeling disconnected, or does he even care? And then part of my acculturation is taking care of him, because I know there could be danger to confront him.
Yeah.
I know I could be labeled as being overly sensitive or a troublemaker, or why do I have to bring up these type of things? Our differences divide us rather than bring us together. And so all of that is at stake. And so I smile and I listen to his story. But it's all those thousands of small deaths, is what I call them, that we have to endure to be able to survive in this country. And I think it's shocking for many folks and audiences when I actually bring these things up, like, oh my God, we had no idea. And I said, well, maybe the reason why you have no idea is because you've never been taught to pay attention to us. In other words, you will if it's a white person who says something. If a white person gets kidnapped in America, thousands of people go looking for them. But yet we have hundreds and thousands of American Indians and Black folks that are disappearing, that are violently, just disappeared. And there's not a huge anything in the news or anything about them. It's almost as if we don't matter as much. And as you watch this president very clearly, just as we begin to have all these shootings, we begin to have, this violence, burning of churches. Do you know that the president of the United States has not said a single word?
Wow.
And neither his cabinet. And we don't even know, or we don't even think about that it's missing. Or even that where we're now allowing no person on the border, we are no longer accepting anybody for asylum, but no one's asked, are we still accepting European Americans?
Yeah.
Europeans into the United States? No one's asked that question. And my hunch is we still are. Because, as he said before, these are shithole countries and these are desirable countries like Norway.
It's sad, very sad. And it's been like this for centuries. So
yes, exactly. For 500 years or more, it's existed in this country. And I think it's only becoming more, someone asked me, is it becoming more pervasive? And I said, no, it's only becoming more public.
Yeah.
And even as we won the Civil War, it does not necessarily mean that we won the hearts and the attitudes of people. It just went underground. And I think it's always been underground. And I also think that a lot of the police brutality that we see is so similar to what happens in the South.
I've got several questions, and this line of conversation makes me want to ask one of the ones it's really high on my list based off of some of the things that we're talking about right now. My question, because you have been in this diversity field, these conversations about race, and it's a hard place to be. I don't have nearly as much time in this field as you. And to be absolutely honest, there have been times where I wanted to just say, oh no, I can't do this. I'm fighting, the Kraken. I feel like I'm fighting this monster and one of the things I've learned in this process is I'm not fighting that. I'm going to change some things and create a new way of being. However, my question for you is, in the last, you said 33 years you've been doing this work. Do you honestly see, or do you believe that things have gotten better or worse? And what's changed, if anything at all?
Hey, would you like to stand in the business spotlight on the I See Color podcast? There are countless reasons why it's a great idea. Share your own diversity story. Introduce your new book, CD, or business. Promote an upcoming concert or public event. You can even brand yourself and grow your own darn audience. Standing in the spotlight as our guest is an affordable way to market yourself and your business to our amazing, influential audience and share your message with the world. Do you see color? Are you ready to shine?
This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me.
Hit us up for details on how you can appear on our show. You can email us at iseecolorradio@gmail.com. Call us at 972-256-8777 or go to our website, www.iseecolorradio.com. I See Color. Taste the rainbow. It's magically delicious.
Well, that's a complex, many layered question because people ask me that all the time. I don't think necessarily that I see institutional change, though I do see more and more people being elected into the Congress, and that's really hopeful and very young and very vibrant and very honest. And I think it happens, during the time of Martin Luther King and Muhammad Ali, and and most people forget, that all these and Malcolm X were all seen as traitors, So it wasn't necessarily they were embraced. And we have this, what I call selective amnesia in this country. I think that just to give you an example, for instance, my work is in corporate America. My work is in the Pentagon and the government agencies. I remember my very first time, just to give you a sense of it, my very first time I walked into the Pentagon to do a workshop, it was 600 people, standing room only. But there was one seat that no one sat in. And I kept wondering, what's going on? And in the front of the room, I have a cultural altar, which is the Kuan Yin, which is the goddess of compassion, and all these pictures of my relatives and candles on this table. So it helps me also feel, not so scared when I walk in, though it was very scary to walk into the Pentagon. And then this general walks in and everyone stands up. And then, they all salute, and then he sits down, and then he sees my altar. And then he yells out to the entire audience and at me, what the hell is that doing here? Oh. And I remember everyone's frozen, including myself. Wow. I feel disrespected. I feel humiliated. I feel, there's no curiosity. And so for a good minute and a half, I have nothing to say except I walk towards him. And everybody's dead quiet. And I have no idea what to say. And what I do is I draw upon my ancestor, my grandmother, and I said, please help me here because this is so painful. And what she whispers to me is, tell him the truth. And when I got to him, I simply said to him, and I don't know where this came from, I said, my altar is here, Tom, which I saw his name. I didn't call him General. I said, Tom, it's here today to remind you what's missing. Whoa. And I had no idea what to say. And then out of the audience, a woman yelled, he won't get it. He hasn't got it for 15 years. And then he turns and he goes, Mary. And I said, well, who's Mary? He goes, she's my executive assistant. Oh. And then she looks at him and says this, notice what is missing. Thank you, Lee Mun Wah. Because I need to ask you, Tom, do you know the name of my children? Do you know where I live? Because I know where you live in the name of all your children because I have to bring them birthday cards. I have to remind you. You have to get flowers for your wife on her anniversary. But let me ask you this. Do you know where I even live? And I told you last week that my mother was in the hospital. Have you ever thought of asking how she's doing? Or that my son is graduating, has in high school? Is it even occurring to you to even get him a gift? And last question I want to ask you, Tom, is this. I have been in this department for 15 years. Have you ever wondered how I feel as the only black woman in the entire department? And with tears in his eyes, he said, Mary, I don't know an answer to any of your questions, and I should. And then he ordered this for the entire armed forces for me to work with them.
That is amazing. That is
And I think at those moments, I can't guarantee you that there's institutional change, But I think that someone once said that the way to end racism is first to end and move the heart, not just the mind, but the heart. And it has been happening. I mean, close to 600,000 people have taken my workshop in 33 years. Every imaginable, corporate, government, you name it.
Yeah.
But it's in that room, and maybe it's the Gandhian belief that it creates a ripple. That after a while they tell somebody else. And I've had, I had my birthday, and my director sent out a letter to everyone in the country who had, and simply said, any experience you've had with Lee Mun Wah, please write in. And I got all these letters, thousands of letters from people who, it was little things that I said, and it said it profoundly changed their lives and the way they were in their workplaces and how they were with people, and they were never the same again. And I think perhaps like the film, I think we're all dying to talk. I think that the color affair was not so difficult. All I simply asked, what's your name and ethnicity? But I think we're dying to talk about how it feels because we don't have an avenue. We don't have a place to be validated, to be honored for those conversations, and we're waiting to. And our country needs to have them because we're at what I call a tipping point. We will either hurt each other or we'll hurt ourselves. But I think we're at a critical point where we've got to begin to talk and face and really talk about the hard issues and stop this celebrating this pretense that we're simply all together and one people.
Yes. That's exactly what I See Color is about. It is a celebration, but it's also acknowledgement, it's recognition, it's affirmation, and it's an opportunity for people to tell their own story and for their own voices to be heard in a way that they haven't really been up until now. The questions that I'm asking, for one, is how do you self-identify? Not how do people see you? How do you see yourself? I could go down a long road of what I am as far as race and ethnicity, but I'm only allowed to be Black.
Exactly.
And that's rough. Sometimes it's rough, and that's okay for today. But we want more and more stories.
Well, I think that people need to ask you, how does it feel? Just as your program is called, as I See Color.
Yes.
And I think that's contrary to what many people were grown up with, and even we were, is that the ideal is to not see color.
Right.
Or maybe the idea that little children don't see color. And I said, that's BS. Little children see color and they see gender. The only difference is they run towards it. And then they learn to be afraid of it and pull back.
Yes.
And so, and also when people ask us, just like when you ask the question, how I like to be identified, is that it's okay for me to be different. It's okay for me to be Chinese. And it's not to me about blending, because blending for me is not about assimilating into this country. For me, it's about adapting constantly to a white male model, which I think the United States is generally, we're all trying to blend into a white male, heterosexual, middle-class Christian environment. And it's so funny because we pride ourselves to be the most multicultural nation in the world, and yet we're the most intolerant of anyone who is not one of those things.
Right, absolutely. So, Lee Mun Wah, about 4 years ago, somewhere in that range, I woke up to a new reality, and I won't go into a whole lot of detail of that new reality. But there was a changing of the guards, and that change made me say, I don't even think I can do diversity anymore. I can't do it. And for about 6 months, I just stopped. I wasn't sure what to do. I took a whole nother job for a moment while I just tried to regroup and refocus and say, what am I supposed to do with this? So I won't tell my story because this interview is about you. My question for you is, have you ever wanted to quit? And if you did, what made you keep going?
It's interesting you asked me that question. I imagine it was, I think these past 3 years, which seems like 100 years right now, is that, of course, I've been discouraged. I think that there are two things. One is that someone once asked me, how could you be so bold given how difficult things are? And I said, well, I just imagine when I walk into a room that my son is going to have to face these people someday. Oh. And that makes me bolder because I realize that if I don't change the hearts and minds of these people in this room, they could really harm and my child. And I believe that racism and sexism and discrimination is a very violent act, so I don't believe it's nonviolent. The second thing is that I had to go across the country right after Trump was elected, and I found out around midnight. And then I was on the road for 4 audience of 400 each around the country. And every place I walked into said, drop your agenda. We need to deal with the election issues and how people are feeling. And I walked into a room, and it was like 400 people, and a black woman and a white man were just screaming at each other. I want you to imagine walking into a room like that and then what to do. And I think that's what we were all faced with. And what happened was I had everybody pair up, and the black woman and the white guy paired up. Mm-hmm. And what I said was, the question I have for you, and each of you are going to learn to listen to each other. And the question is, what was good and what was hard about this election for you as a white person, as a black person, Latino woman, gay, etc. What was good and what was hard about it? And so the black man first had to listen to the black woman. And after she told her story, the questions he had to ask were to reflect back one thing that was most important that she said. The second one was for him to say, tell me more about that. Another one was, what angered you about the election? What hurt you about it? What's familiar about it? And what do you need or want? And by the way, they had to listen to ask these questions. He couldn't do anyone except the questions. And then after she was done, she would tell him how well she thought he was a good listener, what it was good about what he did, and what was how he could improve. And then lastly, he had to tell her what moved or touched him about what she said. Mm. Now, at the end of this exercise, and she does that with him, that the both of them hugged and cried. And the audience wanted to know what happened here between the two of you, because everybody was doing this exercise. And what he said was, I did not know how important this election was to her as a black woman. And the things I've heard, I've been protected from, I've never heard. And she looked at him and said, I never thought a white man who backed Trump would even want to hear and sit down and hear my story and believe me and be moved. Mm. And the two of them looked at each other and said, we have a lot of dinners and lunches together that we need to have to get to know each other. And this happened in a span of less than 23 minutes. And people have asked me all over the country you see, I think that when you think about it, is this worse than the times of Martin Luther King? Is it worse than the times of Malcolm X or Muhammad Ali or during the time of slavery? Is it worse? I think that it was more visible. I think it became underground, which makes it more poisonous and more dangerous.
Right.
But I think that it's always been there because we haven't had a dialogue on it. When you think about the national conversation on race, everybody talked to a panel, and the panel talked to the people, but no one talked to each other. This is one of the things I've been talking about. Is I think the reason why we don't have people talk to each other is because we don't know what to do with the emotions. We don't know how to guide it. We don't know how to. One thing I was sharing with was that we've gotten very good at being defensive, in denial, and attacking, and not taking responsibility, which are all unhealthy ways to communicate. What we haven't gotten good at is being self-reflective, being curious, taking responsibility, and the willingness to change. Now, I want you to hear those last 4. Mm-hmm. And every one of those 4, you would not attribute to this president. He's done neither of those. He's done all the dysfunctional ones. And so he's reinforced this. And, and I think there's 2 things that you could probably say, 2 issues that he has promoted since the day he was elected: fear and blame.
Yeah.
He has not provided anything that is bringing us together, a vision of creating bridges with us, a way of creating something new that would help everyone. It's all about tearing something down, being afraid of someone, and blaming somebody for all his shortcomings. And so the work then is not just simply to go, I've got to give up because I can't afford to. Right. But the work is to stay with it because we need to teach how to be curious, self-reflective, taking responsibility, and the willingness to change. We've got to model it and change it. I think that Gandhi imagined that he had the whole entire empire of Britain, not the entire, but all the power of Britain walk out. And how did he do it? He just simply modeled what he was talking about. The kindness to make your own living, to be honored, and to be paid well. All the things that Jesus and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talked about were all the things that any human being should be getting. And so really those are human rights.
Right.
And we've forgotten that. And I think that that's important at this time. I was just thinking of a line that Kirk Douglas just said yesterday in an interview, not yesterday, but when he said in Europe, because they were talking about horse scenes, and he said in Europe, they won't let horses be filmed falling because they might get hurt. However, in America, we train horses to fall. We also train people to fail. We also set people up to fail rather than to promote them. And I think that, in fact, this presidency is all about setting people up to fail, to be feared, and to blame people. But perhaps that is not a way of bringing this country together, but rather tearing it apart.
So, yes, everything that you're saying is definitely hitting home. And I want to, so I ask you the question, was there a time that you wanted to quit? And we both know that maybe pausing for a moment to reflect, but quitting is not an option. And I had to learn that for myself. One of the things that I also wanted to really focus on was...
Well, I wanted to say something in there. I think resting is an option.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important when you do this work to surround yourself with people who care, who are activists, so that you can collectively be together. I believe very strongly that just before Martin Luther King was shot, they talk about he thought he was failing. He felt like he no longer was leading the movement, and that somehow when he started to move into economic oppression and poverty, that suddenly people said, no, you need to stay on civil rights. And so he felt like somehow he was losing that momentum and that mantle. And he became very discouraged. And I think it took the people around him to tell him that he was still relevant and that he was still important. And I think that's what we need to do for each other. That I think we need to also stop putting people on pedestals because they're human.
Right.
They get tired. And there's times I wish I had more of a life. And so I learned how to take time to garden, to be with friends, to have dinner so I can get recharge and re-enter. Because I think that it will take the rest of my life. It's not something that could be done in a workshop. It will take all of ourselves to continue this conversation long past our diversity workshops, long past any president. I think Barack Obama put it well. He said, I cannot do it by myself. We will all have to do it. It isn't about simply having a wonderful black president or woman or man or gay person. It's about us all deciding that we have to participate in this process of healing.
I totally agree. I have a phrase, and I can't even remember where I got it, but it says that educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. And when
exactly.
And when I stepped back and took some time, I realized that I don't need to stop. I just need to kind of tweak this and change directions, because the heart has to be engaged in what we're doing. If it is not, it's just memorization. Basically, we're learning something.
Right, because we need hope, and I think hope is a very powerful thing, and that's what the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and so many others are bringing forth. I was thinking something that Angela Davis said, who I really admire all these years. She said, because I think we've been all taught this. She said, I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I can no longer accept.
Yes.
And I think that's why we stay at what we're doing.
Yes.
I think that's why she has stayed. And I think our children are the hope of the next generation. But I want to just make it very clear. My father used to say, I want to make this a better world for you. But I think what he was saying is that he wouldn't see it in his lifetime. And I have decided that I don't want to tell my son, I want a better world for you. I want to see it now. I want to see it in my lifetime. So I want to see it in the people around me. And so it's one person at a time. And as that ripple gets larger, I do believe, as John Lennon said in Imagine, we are not alone. There are so many more others of us working on this.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I have asked you some of the harder questions that I have. I have a really quick, because these are okay, so what's left are my fun questions. And there's a couple that I've been waiting to ask, because we know about Lee Mun Wah as a professional, as a filmmaker, as an author, but there has to be some fun there. So you talked about being able to kind of step away and recharge and refresh. So I'm going to ask you a few things that some of our listeners may want to know about you, because I see you have a pretty good fan base of people who have gone through your trainings, and I've heard really wonderful things. So, and I want to add really quickly, if that's okay. I am honored to say that I personally, Kyle Moncure, will be attending your workshop in California and spending some days with you.
Great.
And I am so excited about being able to learn from you. I consider it an honor, and I know that it's going to make me so much more powerful in what I do in this diversity work. And so I know that we're going to hopefully include some information about how others can get involved and come to some of your workshops later on. But I'm really psyched about this. And so,
oh, wonderful. It'd be great to meet you in person.
Yes, again. For sure. Okay, so here's some of my fun questions, rapid fire. And if any of them are too weird, it's okay, I promise. We can skip them. So my first question for you, my rapid fire questions. What did you want to be at age 13? Before anybody told you what you should be.
Oh, yeah. My life story is coming out this year called River of Jade, and I talk about that.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. It took 11 years to write. It's called River of Jade.
Oh, I want to have you back on. Okay.
Yeah, so one of the questions is, one of the things I wanted to be was I wanted to be a knight. I read about all these famous knights, and I wanted to rescue. Prince Valiant was my hero.
Oh, my goodness.
And I think there was something about just starting out as, a little kid in a castle. He was there, and it was just, and saving the moment. And I think, so it was always this belief that people come through. Jim Thorpe was one of those people that American Indian who became this incredible football player and decathlon and the Olympics and everything. And there was always but I always realized there was always these heroines like El Cid who came forth, and he was just on his way to see his bride, and these Muslims were attacking, and they captured 6 or 7 of them, and then El Cid decides that he's not going to hang them. He's going to ask them to no longer fight and free them, and then he has to end up doing all these other things. His life takes another course, and I kept thinking it takes bravery, to stand up in times when you can't imagine that you would be the one to stand up. And so I think that became the template for my life. These heroes in the movies made me see things and people that I probably wouldn't have.
That's very cool. My son, I have a son that's 30, will be 30 this year, and I asked him when he was very young what he wanted to be, and for many years he wanted to be a cab driver. So I didn't know if you were going to have something really funny like that. But a knight, that's very noble. So, Sir
Well, I think
Mun Wah?
it's important, even as your child says, I want to be a cab driver, is to ask him, tell me why,
Do you know?
And
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so I think that would be important for him to share more of that, because it could be all this whole history about they look like they're having so much fun and they get freedom and all of this. And it'll tell you about your son. It'll tell you about what excites him.
He's 30
I had his mother tell me that to the moment her child was born, he could hardly wait to live on his own.
Oh,
and
my
there was
goodness.
Just this sense of freedom that was inside of him.
Right.
And there's some people who just wish they could stay at home. Like my son, when he was 16, he said, I wish I could stay this way forever. Mom pays for everything. I get to have fun, and never have any responsibilities. And I thought, how cute, at an age he wanted to stay at forever.
He knew what he was talking about, though.
Yeah,
really.
He did, exactly.
Okay. So a knight, that's a very cool answer. Okay, here's another. All right. So I was interviewed for my first show, for my pilot show, and one of the questions that was asked of me was to describe a meal that defines my culture. So that could have been something that I ate growing up or something that I eat now. But culture is a big word, and there's so many things that go into that word. But food is definitely one of them. So for you...
Well, it's very interesting. It's interesting because in my workshops, whenever I tell people, even with cab drivers, by the way, just to tell you, is that, first of all, I always tell cab drivers how I love their accent, and then they always have me guess. But the way I can get them to tell me about their lives is tell me what you love about being Ethiopian. Tell me what you love about being Afghani. And I think that what I love about being Chinese, and to me about the culture, is the kindness, the sense of family, the ancestral connection, a sense of grace, of design, of caring for our environment, and a sense of harmony and balance. And the yin-yang is also part of recognizing that both bad and good and evil are all intertwined, and also to take care of the elders.
Yes.
That they're not elderly, but they are our elders, and that in a very respectful way. And in so many other countries, they revere the elders, they revere the ancestors, I remember once putting a picture of my grandmother on my altar, and then there's a kind of like a transparency and next to it. And then someone said, "What is that about?" And I said that because my ancestors, my grandmother particularly, is always with me. And then I remembered what the white woman said. She goes, "Can I have it? Can I have it as a souvenir?"
Okay.
And I said, "Just look at my face. What do you see?"
Yeah.
And then I slapped her. No, I'm just kidding. But what it was is that she didn't realize is that it was not for her to take it.
Right.
And there are some things you just cannot possess and take and own, but rather this country's got to learn is to open your hand rather than always keep taking things, and to learn to give. And so it's not about possessions. I mean, when the American Indians met the settlers, the three things they asked them is to remember to share, take care of the land, and take care of each other.
Yes.
And we did neither. And I think that we became takers instead of givers. And I think we have to be reminded. And I think that's when I think of the Chinese culture, it's always wanting to make sure that you have enough to eat, whether you're warm, whether you're comfortable, whether or not you feel honored or respected. And we're always looking at you to be sure to make sure that we haven't disrespected you or dishonored you or had you leave the place hungry and cold. And I think that in the United States, it's more about me, rather than the other, rather than noticing and paying attention. I remember when I was the first day I walked into my special ed class where I was teaching special ed for 25 years. And the first thing I said to the students is that it's not that you can't learn. We just haven't figured out a way to teach you. In other words, I took responsibility. I didn't blame them for not learning.
Got it. All right. So I like it. When it comes to culture, there's so many threads that make up that whole tapestry. There's so many, and I love it. And so much about the Asian Chinese culture that I love as well. So I see you. I see you.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, so my very last question for today, anyway, because we definitely want to have you back on once your book is out there.
I would love that. I would love that.
And check that out. Is I'm only one person, and I know you're only one person, but we all can work together. But my question for you is, how do we heal? How does this nation begin the process of healing and moving forward in a positive way from where we are right now?
Well, it's actually exactly the way that we approach medicine. When you come in to a hospital, the doctor doesn't look at all the healthy parts. He asks you, where does it hurt? How long has it been hurting? What is your history around different medicines and your family medical history? And I think that that's exactly how we should approach the healing of this country around differences, is that we need to first find out what hurts us, what pains us, what has been our history, what wounds us, and be moved and touched. And so that when we get to that question is, what do you need or want from me? It begins first by listening, being moved, and being curious, and then also wanting to notice our part in the wounding and taking responsibility, and then the willingness to change. To me, that is all of the process of healing. So it isn't just about waving a flag or a huge celebration or food. It's the hard work. It's the hard work that all relationships have to have. And I think that once we have that, I remember I wrote something on all of my handouts, which I give, and it's like a 40-page handout that I often give to people when I do my work. And it says, we're only one question away from being connected, from learning about one another's journey. And that one question only comes when we are willing to be open to hearing another truth and another world outside of our own.
I love it. Lee Mun Wah, thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome.
I so much appreciate your input, your insight, your presence in general, but I am very, very glad that you decided to do this interview. How can people learn more about Stir Fry seminars and your workshops?
Well, first of all, it's not a restaurant, though people think it is. I do workshops all over the country and trainings for teachers and government, et cetera. The address here is 2311 8th Street, And our email address is stirfryseminars.com, and you can look us up. And also, if you go right to our company name, Stir Fry Seminars, it'll take you right to our website. All of our films are streamed, and all for every other month for a long time. For 33 years, I wrote newsletters, so you get to read all these topics that I've written about.
Cool.
And then it's really very useful one. And then also you get to find out about all the workshops. And we do have one coming up this next weekend, and and we have them during the summer, 5-day ones and weekend ones. And we also certify people to become trainers all over the world. And right now we're in the process of creating Stir Fry Seminar, our Kuan Yin training centers, compassionate learning all over the world. So
beautiful.
People will be able to make good use and do of our work. And then a big project that I'm working on is with a gentleman called Ken Hardy. And we're going to be on stage doing a thing called Let's Get Real. Walking each other home, and it's about, we're going to have a conversation, he and I, on stage, and we're going to ask each other questions, and we're only going to talk to each other.
I love it.
And then the audience is going to be, assuming that they're going to ask us questions, but in fact, they're going to get up and form a group of 4 with people they don't know, and then have a conversation. We'll give them a question, and then when they're all done, really loving and enjoying the situation, we tell them to find a total of 8 people, and then agree to meet once a month at their homes, each other's homes, and have a conversation. And we'll provide film clips and discussion and books. And we're going to call that Walking Each Other Home. And it's a national conversation on race. And so we don't have to wait for a crisis to happen, but in fact, we get to know each other now. And to me, that's all the process of filming, of really coming together as a country and healing, is to do it in times of peace, so that in times of war, what happens is that we still remain together, not separated.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Hey, would you like to stand in the business spotlight on the I See Color podcast? There are countless reasons why it's a great idea. Share your own diversity story. Introduce your new book, CD, or business. Promote an upcoming concert or public event. You can even brand yourself and grow your own darn audience. Standing in the spotlight as our guest is an affordable way to market yourself and your business to our amazing, influential audience and share your message with the world. Do you see color? Are you ready to shine?
This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me.
Hit us up for details on how you can appear on our show. You can email us at iseecolorradio@gmail.com. Call us at 972-256-8777 or go to our website, www.iseecolorradio.com. I See Color. Taste the rainbow. It's magically delicious.
Well, again, thank you so much. I look forward to my 5 days with you in June.
Okay, looking forward to that.
June, taking it all in. And I think that's it for us today, but I definitely look forward to your book and getting you back on the show. And thank you again, Lee Mun Wah.
Thank you.
All right, happy Friday. Sabona.
Okay.
And we will talk again very soon.
All right, live well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to I See Color with Kyle Moncure. If you like our show and want to know more, check out iseecolorradio.com. And don't forget to leave us a review. Join us soon for another dose of diversity, history, culture, authenticity, and taste the rainbow. It's magically delicious.